Okay. So who brought BPHS with them? So just open up to your Argala chapter. I give my own translation here. What, the Argala chapter? Did you read it ahead?
I tried.
So you read it, that's good. Because I want you to see that it's there.
Yeah.
And what page is it?
440.
440. I want you to see that it's there so that you don't have some idea that we're talking about something that somebody made up or something random or something that's Jaimini astrology. It's right here in Parashara. Whole chapter.
You made it up.
All the rules.
I went to several Alpha conferences and I never heard this word until I went to the SJC conference last summer.
Mm-hmm.
What, this Argala?
Argala, yeah.
Nobody talked about it.
No, I
We
never
only talked about Sanjay.
Yeah.
Well, you read it.
Yeah.
Did you understand it?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well that's why no one's talking about
That's why they avoid it. It's hard to comprehend.
it. Some people understand it, and since Guruji's been on the scene, people are talking about it more because now people understand it. And because he uses it again and again and again. And if we look, it's so important to know how to use. Argala itself. Say again?
I think it's quite easy for most to read.
Well, you're smarter than me.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, what's your understanding of Argala?
Well, I just read it when you start me to read.
Given that. He's backpedaling.
So it says if there are planets in the 4th, 2nd, and 11th from a house or the planet itself, that is an Argala, which is a supporting combination, provided there are no planets in the 10th, 12th, and 3rd houses respectively, which would cancel out the Argala.
That's primary Argala.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 5th house.
Yeah,
5th house and
5th and 9th house. And then the three
Argala divides chart in half, basically. Here I give the Monier-Williams definition, which is a wooden bolt or a pin fastening a door or to cover a vessel. So
Cover a vessel.
something like when you put these days we have everything in plastic, so we just have this lid that seals on.
Okay.
Where before, if you think about the old glass jars that you put the metal on and it seals it down or something like that, that's an Argala. It's something that's sealing.
Well, that makes sense. See, that was what I couldn't visualize.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be visualizing?
Yeah.
So what the 2nd, 4th, and the 11th house does for what?
So it's a seal. It's a bolt. It's saying that this is going to happen. It's making things definite.
I was thinking of a lightning bolt that was coming in.
No.
I was thinking of a bolt,
No,
like a
it's-
screw and a bolt.
Yeah, it's like a screw, like a bolt that you bolt something down, so that it's there. You know it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
If I bolt something to the wall, it's not moving. It's on that wall. So it's in that sense of this is going to be there.
So is it a prediction so you can say with accuracy?
Exactly.
But how much does predictions, what is the ratio?
In general, our ratio, if we do the best possible job that's available, we're 80%. 80% of reality can be predicted. First, Maitreya, the student, he says to Parashara, you were asking me, on the stoop, if you look at this, Bhagavan Yargala Prakto Shubhada Bhavato Duna Tamaham Shrotamuchami Salakshana Phalam Mune. The whole thing is written like this. All of Parashara, we could be singing it if we wanted to. But somebody read, Maitreya is the student in BPHS who's talking to Parashara. Who's going to be Maitreya?
I'll be Maitreya.
Okay, it's only one verse. Ask it sincerely.
O one giving blessings, you have spoken of the goodness that will be given by Argala. I am anxious to hear the particulars of these results, O sage.
So Maitreya starts off with Maitreya saying, you've spoken of this subha, these good results that come from Argala. Tell me how this works. And all of us here, we've all heard of Argala. We've all heard of predictions coming from it, but how's it work? Parashara responds. He says, Maitreya, that which is called Argala gives the definite, the dridha, results of a house, and the fixed, the stira, results of the planets. It will be expounded greatly by me. So dridha is fixed. I'm reading my translation.
Oh.
It's an okay translation. It's the best out there, so far. But
What this? It's kind of dry in comparison to yours.
well, my concept is to be able. We got to read this and we got to make it fit and work for us.
Yeah.
We should be able to read it enjoyably. It shouldn't. A good translation should flow. But so it says that it gives the definite, the dridha results of a house, and the fixed. So those are pretty intense words. The dridha, the not changing, and the fixed, the definite results. It's a pretty intense statement to make in the beginning of that chapter. I was impressed by making such a statement, because a lot of times you'll even see in lines it'll say, if this happens, then this can occur. It'll say that. Sometimes it says this will happen, no doubt. But it's a pretty big statement. So the Argala shows the objectives of a graha or a house. While graha aspects show the desires and Rashi aspects show the situation, the Argala shows the objective. Next verse. Verse 3. Know that a planet in the 4th, 2nd, and 11th has Argala. A planet taking position in the 10th, 12th, and 3rd becomes Badaka. He uses the word Badaka. In the dictionary, means obstructing, oppressing, hindering, or opposing. We know about the Badaka Sthana and the Badakesh. So he uses two words here. Sometimes he uses the word Badaka, sometimes he uses the word Virodha. And we're going to use just the word Virodha instead of Badaka. That way we don't get confused with Badaka versus Badakesh and Badakstana.
Badaka and Virodha are the same?
Badaka and Virodha are the same. If you look, Virodha means blockage, hindrance, prevention, impediment, or opposition. And if you look at the definition of Badaka, it means obstructing, oppressing, hindering. So both are about hindering, obstructing, blocking, not allowing, getting in the way. So we'll use Virodha, that way we don't get confused with Badakstana and Badakesh. But the thing is, it's saying, he's using the word Badaka. It's causing that blockage to happen. And if we see, right here it's given in pairs. He says 4th, 2nd, and 11th with the 10th, 12th, and 3rd. So we have the 2nd gives Argala, and it's Virodha, it's blocked by the 12th. Then the 11th gives Argala, and it's blocked by the 3rd. Then the 4th gives Argala, and it's blocked by the 10th. So that's what this verse is telling us so far. When the Badaka, the obstruction, is there without strength or of lesser number, it will be destroyed. So now, if the 2nd house is giving Argala, meaning it's giving intervention, it's helping to achieve the objectives of the house. That 2nd house will help achieve, the 12th house will block the achieving. If there's more planets in the Argala than there is in the obstruction, then the Argala wins. If there's more planets in the Badaka, then the Badaka wins. Now if there's no planets there, then what? Is there no Argala?
Then there's transits. No.
No argument.
Oh, no. Argala.
There's no Argala?
There's nothing.
The signs give Argala.
Ah.
And then we have to look at which signs are strongest. And we have to see the stronger, is the 12th house a stronger sign or the 2nd house a stronger sign? Mm-hmm. Is there going to be blockage or Argala happening there? Okay. So the signs. Every house affects every other house with Argala. There's no house escaping. If there's no planets there, the sign is affecting. And the sign shows the situation. It shows the place being an intervention or a blockage. Where if there's a planet there, it's showing an animate being that's giving help or blocking the fructification.
So the Argala houses are 2, 11, and 4. And
This
the
is
instruction houses are 12.
so far.
Yeah, 12, 3, and 10. That's a 1-to-1 correspondence. So is that it was 2 and 12, 11 and 3, 4 and 10?
If you look and think of in the North Indian chart, it's easiest to see 2 and 12, 3 and 11, 4 and 10.
Okay. So what are the planets in 2 and no planets in 12, but they're planets in another obstruction house, say 3 or 10?
Okay, then we'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to go orderly.
So intervention, it could be a good intervention or it could be a bad intervention.
We'll get into that too. Parashara tells us that.
Okay.
Next verse, 4. Malefics in the third changed the obstruction, Maitreya. Malefics in the third changed the obstruction, Maitreya. Best of Brahmins, that is known as Viparita Argala. Thus should be known the planets and houses, and this one I had the hardest time translating the word Phala Margalitam, because it's Phala, the fruit, Marga, the path. So it's the path of Argala, the division of the path of Argala and the fruit given from it. Thus should be known this. So malefics in the third change the obstruction. So now, as I just said, the second is giving Argala, the 12th is blocking it. The 11th is giving Argala with the third blocking it. The 4th is giving Argala with the 10th blocking it. But if there's malefics in the third, then it's Viparita. It switches. The third house gives the Argala. If there's malefics. If there's benefics in the third, it doesn't give Argala. And how will benefics in the third house block? Do you know? How do they block? They make a person too nice. And now that's great for somebody who wants to be a sannyas or a monk and who doesn't care about getting anything. But when you need to get things, sometimes you need to be a little pushy. You don't get a return of the phone call. You're waiting in line and no one's answering, or sometimes you've got to get pushy. You got to get a little bit more aggressive in your task to get the job done.
So the malefic in the third gives you the assertiveness,
Gives you the
courage
exactly.
to do what you need to.
It gives you. You see, if it's in the 11th, any planet in the 11th gives the Argala by automatically giving you. You just get it. You make the phone call and it's right there. The person's answering. You go in line and right there they're answering whatever you need. If there's something in the third, it's blocking that happening. They're not just giving it to you. There's a blockage happening there. If it's a benefic, then the person is too nice. They don't exert themselves enough. They try and not interrupt, or they must be busy. I'll call some other time, and the job doesn't get done. The malefic says, I don't have time for this, and gets a little louder so that they get heard. So this is where the viparita happens.
So would the 11th house become the one that,
No.
if the 11th was the one that there would give,
Mm-hmm.
the Argala, the 11th would block it?
No, not in that case. It's
So
just
it's
the
just
third.
give.
Yeah.
The 11th would give and
Well,
the...
if the third becomes viparita Argala, then the third starts giving.
Hmm.
Because if whichever one is stronger.
Whichever planet.
Let's say there's Jupiter. Let's say there's Mars in the 11th and Jupiter in the 3rd. Then Jupiter is blocking what Mars is trying to give. If there's Jupiter in the 11th, then Jupiter is giving. If there's Mars in the 3rd, then Mars is giving. But if Moon's in the 3rd, it's blocking. Because it's a benefit.
Yeah, I have Jupiter in the third.
So it makes you too nice.
I have Saturn in the 3rd, so I'm mean.
Say again? You have what?
I have Saturn in the 3rd, so I'm mean.
When you need to be.
Yeah, it's true.
When you need to be,
Yeah.
you'll...
Kick ass.
Yeah. And that's that malefic there. It gives that ability. Now for a monk or a priest or somebody who's not trying to acquire lots of things in the world, it's better off. We want them to be peaceful, gentle, ahimsa type people. Otherwise, for the average person in the world, you need a little bit of, You need to be able to attain what you need.
And this is true from the Argala Lagna and the Lagna?
Yes, both. Yeah. Little different from each, but it affects both.
So this is just not for Lagna, it's for every house actually.
Well, every
Right.
house. Every house.
It's just not Lagna.
So the benefics make a person too nice, and there's something in psychology these days called assertiveness therapy. So benefics in the third, if they're causing the blockage, tell the person to go do assertiveness therapy.
Well, I need to go.
If there's malefics there, it's good unless the person is considered aggressive by other people, and if it's causing problems in their life. Then Western psychology has this wonderful thing called Nonviolent Communication. It's a program. And for people with the malefics in the third, it's great. Because that helps them still have that parakrama to go and get what they need, but to do it in a nicer way.
So I do Aikido.
Next sloka. The 5th house is a place of Argala, and the 9th house gives it Virodha. So here he adds another one in. And so this is considered a secondary Argala, while the other ones are considered primary. Now primary means it's giving direct intervention. It directly affects. It's going to be very instant, a planet in there. It's going to be showing itself more. Where the 5th and 9th house Argala and the 6th and 8th house Argala are going to be, because the 8th house is giving Argala and the 6th is obstructing. They're considered secondary, and you feel them at a secondary level. They affect you through something else. So it's a secondary Argala. Now the 1st and the 7th house are considered a tertiary Argala. And whether the 7th house is giving Argala or Virodha will depend on the planet there.
You said 7th house?
7th house.
Okay, so the secondary one is Argala in the 5th and
5 and 9. Yeah,
Five and
Argala is
nine.
giving, 9th is blocking.
blocking, and that's the only one, only
No,
secondary
and
one?
then the 8th is giving and 6th is blocking.
So it's the reverse.
Yeah.
Don't-
Just like the Lagna. Just like you have 2, 12 and 11, 3. You
Yeah.
have 5, 9 and 8, 6.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. It's
Okay.
just, it does this reverse thing.
Yeah, it's reversing back and forth.
Okay.
And if you remember that it's reversing back and forth, then you'll easily remember.
So there is a pattern.
A little bit, yeah. I was actually looking at the numerology of it. If you count from to the 5th house, then it's 9 houses back to the Lagna. If you count to the 9th house, it's 5 houses back to the Lagna. If you count to the 3rd house, it's 11 houses back to the Lagna. If you count to the 11th house, it's 3rd back to the Lagna. So it's this whole relationship happening here. If you count to the 6th house, it's 8 back to the Lagna. If you count to the 8th house, it's 6 back to the Lagna.
So the tertiary one is 1-7?
The tertiary, the 3rd level obstruction, is the 7th house. And the 7th house it's similar where the 3rd house gives a viparita if it's a malefic. The 7th house, it will depend on what planet it is and how, I can't say benefic or malefic because it depends. For somebody who has a Scorpio Lagna, Mars wouldn't be bad in the 7th house because it's supporting that. If it's something that's malefic to that sign, it's going to be more obstructing. And then we also take the karaka of the house. For the Lagna, the main karaka is the sun. So what planets are friendly to the sun and what planets are not friendly to the sun?
Mars,
Mars
Jupiter.
and Jupiter.
So Saturn is going to cause the most obstruction in the 7th from the Lagna.
For Scorpio.
Now if we look from the 3rd house, and we do all the Argalas from the 3rd house, we do 212 from the 3rd house, we do 311 from the 3rd house, we do 410 from the 3rd house. If we look at the 7th, from that, the planet that will least obstruct, the karaka of the 3rd house is Mars. So even though Jupiter is good at the level of in the 9th house for guru and teachings, it's going to obstruct that 3rd house. Because Jupiter is the peaceful planet, where Mars is the aggressive planet. So we use the karakas in that way. From the 4th house, its karaka is the moon. So planets that obstruct the moon in the 7th from it are going to obstruct that house. Where planets that are friendly to the moon will help the 4th house. Okay? We'll do a few examples. So that's why, look, I got these charts hanging up. Next verse, though. It's Tamo Graha Bhava. The houses are understood in reverse from the Tamo Graha, from the dark planets. Now, if you look at the translation that we have here of BPHS, they say the nodes for Tamo Graha, because it can't be all tamasic planets. So they translate Tamo as dark, all the dark planets as the nodes. Jaimini mentions a few verses. He only has a very few verses on Argala. Nothing like Parashara has. And in there he gives us one line that says, Viparitam Keto, which means the change the direction with Ketu. So instead of taking all from both nodes doing the Argala in reverse, only from Ketu do we do the Argala in reverse. Instead, for Ketu, instead of seeing the 2nd house as Argala and the 12th house is blocking, for Ketu, the 12th house is giving and the 2nd house is blocking.
So why can't it be all tamasic planets? Because it says Tamo Graha.
It says Tamo Graha, but Jaimini clarifies. He says only Ketu.
So Ketu's in the 2nd?
No, from Ketu. We can, from every planet and from every house, we can do Argala.
Okay.
For example, let's look at Amla's chart, and we see she has Ketu in the 10th house. Now, if we look at the 2nd and 12th from there, we're looking at the 11th and the 9th house. Which house is giving Argala?
The 2nd.
No, 9th. It's just
Oh,
Jupiter.
It's backwards, so Jupiter is the one giving Argala.
Okay, I see that.
Okay?
Okay. Normally it would be the 2nd. K2 wasn't.
Well, let's go for Moon. Who's giving Argala to the Moon there?
Jupiter.
Jupiter's giving. So Jupiter is giving Argala to the Moon and Argala to Ketu.
But that's being cancelled by Mars and
No,
Venus.
Venus, Mars and Venus is
it's stronger, so
because 2 planets.
it's canceling, and so it's giving more obstruction
Right.
for her Ketu.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, for the planets, we're using, when we do Argala from a planet, we're using its natural significations. Or its Bhava Karaka nature. It's Bhava Karaka nature. So the natural significations of every planet, it's all about for the world. Being in the world. What do I want from the world? The sun wants to give you fame. It wants to give you power. Saturn wants to give you poverty and hardships. Mercury wants to give you business and friends. In this way, every planet wants to give you something in the world. Ketu wants to get you out of the world. So if we're looking what's giving you something to you in this world, it's actually hurting moksha. Nothing is the best thing for moksha. Losing everything is the best thing for moksha. So for liberation, losing everything gives you the Argala. So Rahu's desires are for the world. So his objectives are to get things in the world. So we take the Argala direct from Rahu. Now for Rahu though, we take the Graha Drishti backwards. Ketu doesn't have Graha Drishti, has no head. But Rahu has Graha Drishti, and for that we take backwards. So when they say that Rahu aspects the 12th, he aspects the 2nd. That 5th house aspect of Rahu is actually falling on the 9th. And the 9th house aspect is falling on the 5th. And the 5th and the 9th house aspect are slightly different. So Ketu we take backwards. Because his objectives are backwards from all the other planets.
Do you consider all the significations of the planets by what houses they lord, or just their natural?
They're primarily their natural significations. When we take house lords, it's a little bit more complex, so I wouldn't advise getting into that just yet. But just as an example, Visti and I were talking about a chart yesterday, and it was a guy trying to get a visa. And so who gives you your visa in your chart?
Government.
Sun.
Travel. The house that gives travel is the 9th house.
Jupiter.
And so he took the 9th lord as the person giving the visa, and did the Argala from the 9th lord. So I wouldn't play with it too. Go by the natural significations for the moment, but it can be used in this way as well. And it was pure obstruction for this, and the guy applied 5 times and still didn't get his visa. And we calculated the because it was a slight bandhana 5 times, and we were calculating the percentages, and it was 100% obstruction. So he's like, thank God I didn't tell that guy in his next dasha.